Hi guys, welcome to episode 4 of the Top 2 podcast. I'm your host Luke, this is my co-host Matt. Matt, say hello.
Hello, how's it going, everyone?
Today we've got our opening weekend of the Premier League season review and a look ahead to game week 2 fixtures. First game of the weekend, Aston Villa Everton. Matt, what's your thoughts on Aston Villa's opening weekend performance and how do you think they'll get on against Everton?
So Villa started off really poorly against everybody. Probably 90% of people expected them to get off to a winning start against Bournemouth, and they just didn't deliver that. They were really poor in that game. They didn't do what they were so good at last season, attacking set pieces, defending from set pieces. They didn't do that well, and that's what kind of gave them a bit of a losing run in his first start of the game. And I just want to highlight Gerrard only having a 35% win rate. It's the same win rate Neville had at Valencia, and it's extremely poor loss for Villa. And I think they're going to struggle again in this game. What do you think?
Yeah, surprisingly, I actually thought they missed Tyrone Mings on Saturday. I thought his leadership at the back was really missed, especially in the first goal. You know, he normally gets on the end of those corners, and there was a scramble in the box. You'd like to think that normally when he plays, that's one of his actual strengths. I thought Diego Carlos had a little bit of a shaky debut next to Concert. But if that's the partnership Gerrard wants going forward, Carlos just going to have to play through his mistakes in the opening couple of games. Thought the fullbacks didn't really get forward as much as normally what you think from an Aston Villa team. Thought Cash and Digne didn't really get involved in the play too much. And then other than that, they didn't really create much all game. You know, you have all those creative players, Buendia, Coutinho, obviously Buendia, come on, Watkins, you know, none of them really stepped up to the plate for Villa, and Bournemouth actually looked quite comfortable.
Yeah. What do you think of Everton?
Everton, I thought were a little bit unlucky. They were second best against Chelsea. I felt like Chelsea controlled the game against them, but Chelsea just lacked that cutting edge pass. And the way Everton was set up with the five at the back with Mina, Tarkowski, and Godfrey before his injury, I actually thought was doing really well to nullify Chelsea. I thought they coped really well with Sterling, Havertz. We'll get on with what we think about Chelsea attack later on. But I thought they coped really well. I think the problem with Everton is that they lack any sort of creativity. Like their four across the midfield are all very workman-like midfielders, like McNeil, Allen, Doucouré, Damari Gray, Anthony Gordon. None of them are really known for that cutting-edge pass. And without a recognised strike on the pitch, I thought they were very blunt up front. And I could, if they had played 180 minutes, I wouldn't have thought they'd have been scoring. So with all that considered in this game, I've gone for a boring 0-0 draw. Matt, what's your prediction?
So I know we said about Everton having struggling to score, but I actually think they will score in this game. I think they'll keep things very solid at the back. They'll be very defensive. I think that'll be a running theme for Frank Lampard this season if he sustains the job, is keeping that defensive very solid. And I think they're going to have to be good from set pieces. And I think they will have one or two threats from set pieces in this game. And I think actually have them to win as 2-0. So.
Wow, 2-0. Wow. I think both teams are really struggling to score. I think Everton actually aren't set up too bad defensively. I really like the signing of Connor Cody, especially with the injury to Godfrey. Cody is an expert in the back three. His distribution with the ball, bringing the ball out from defence is something I think Everton lack in the three centre-backs that they played on Saturday. So I think Cody and his leadership next to Tarkowski. Obviously, it's a shame about the injury to Godfrey. It looks like that one's going to be out for a while. But with Cody, Tarkowski, and one more back there, Mina, obviously I know he's got a knock as well. Or Holgate or Keane. I think that could be a quite solid back three for Everton. So I think defensively they'll be okay. I just think they need one or two more additions the other way.
I think it's a massive improvement defensively than last year.
Yeah, I agree. Right, on to the next game of the weekend, Arsenal-Leicester. Obviously, Arsenal kicked us off on the Friday night game against Crystal Palace. I thought they were absolutely sublime the first 45. The way Jesus, Saka and Martinelli all linked up together, I thought was really exquisite. I thought Jesus' hold-up play, I'm a big fan of Jesus, but I didn't know his hold-up play was as good as it was. His touch, his control, his back-to-goal play, knocking it out to the wingers. I thought they were excellent. Martinelli missed that big chance, which for me should be scoring.
Yes.
Which then put them in at 2-0 at half time and made the whole game comfortable, really. But there were a couple of shaky moments at times in the second half for them. I think they took the foot off the gas, maybe run out of steam a little. And the one thing I will say is they do need to create more clear-cut chances. They only had 2 shots on target all game, which is surprising because on the eye test, it was all Arsenal, especially for the first 45 minutes. And then for at least 20 minutes of the second half. You just thought they've created more. So Arsenal need to get that chance creation up. Ødegaard, he needs to up his game a little bit. But for me, it was a very positive performance. Saliba was fantastic. His
Yeah.
recovery runs, his reading of the game, the way I felt he marshalled the defence as well, which was surprising for a player on his league debut. He looks a Rolls Royce defender. What were your thoughts, Matt?
Yeah, and I think Arsenal are playing a lot of the football that they've been known to play for a long time, especially under the Arsene Wenger before. I think Mikel Arteta is almost trying to replicate that because he knows that's what the Arsenal fans love. He's played under that system under Wenger, and I think he wants to recreate that. And he's also got experience being Pep's assistant. I think he's definitely grown into his role as manager at Arsenal, and I think he's getting better and better. I was watching the All or Nothing on Amazon Prime, and I thought the way he talks about football, the way he articulates it, it's absolutely beautiful. And I think he's going to be a manager that just keeps improving. As for Leicester, I thought they did well to get two ahead, but then when you're two ahead in the Premier League, you really cannot accept conceding 2 goals and going back to 2-2. It shows that they dropped too deep. They let Brentford come onto them, and that shouldn't happen in a Premier League side for me.
Yeah. I thought Leicester have been brought back for a few years, and I think the way Ivan Toney especially bullied the likes of Evans and Amati and that during the game, I thought, I do think they need to improve defensively, whether it's through coaching or through recruitment. I don't think Ward's a number one goalkeeper either for me. I do think they need to replace Schmeichel. They do miss his leadership qualities at the back. Maddison, I think, had a brilliant game. I think he's pivotal for them. I think if Maddison goes to Newcastle, Leicester will really be down there because, especially the later they leave it in the window, the more likely that the replacement they're getting is A, not going to be of the same quality, and B, they're going to get price bumped more and more because the club who they're buying from will have less time to buy their replacement. I'm seeing a lot of links, Tielemans again, to Arsenal and Liverpool. I think we'll go on to Liverpool later, but I think he'd fit like a glove at Liverpool or at Arsenal.
Yeah.
I think if they lose him as well, they won't be able to replace him for the 25-30 million that they're likely to get. So I think it's worrying times at Leicester. I think the sell to buy of some of their key players, they always seem to have really bad injury records as well. So I don't know if that's something that's happening in training. But I've had Leicester to lose this one 2-1.
Yeah, and I've also heard about Fofana leaving as well, and if he goes as well, that's also a massive loss for them. That'll be 3 huge key players that they're going to miss. And I fancy Arsenal to carry on their momentum and win this game 3-1.
Yeah, decent. Right, on to Brighton Newcastle now. For me, the two teams that, for me, performed the best this weekend. I thought Brighton were brilliant against Man United, and I thought Newcastle absolutely dominated Nottingham Forest. They had 23 shots, 10 on target. What surprised me was I've been telling everyone who plays FPL, they're going 5 at the back, Shaw, Botman, Burn. But Botman didn't play. They went 4 at the back. They were positive. That midfield pairing of Bruno and Joe Linton just complement each other so well.
Yeah.
Joe Linton is the box-to-box 8 and Bruno is the playmaking 6, I think is brilliant. I think Willock slightly is a 3 down. That's where I think of someone like a James Patterson or Lucas Paqueta had really improve Newcastle's cutting edge going forward, that creativity, that killer pass. Obviously, the first goal from Shaw was an absolute brilliant goal, absolute thunderbolt. He scored a few of those in his time in the Premier League. I remember one where he dribbled through about 5-6 players and lashed it in. I remember one where he walked onto it first time and pinged it top bins. He's a very technically gifted centre-back. And I think he often goes underrated in this Newcastle team. And then the second goal was a lovely ball from Joe Linton through to Wilson. Wilson lifts it over Henderson. And to be fair, the whole Newcastle team was excellent. They nullified Nottingham Forest to no shots on target. The midfield swarmed Forest for me. Yeah. Bruno controlled the game with his deep lying passes. The way he sprays the ball is brilliant. I think a lot of teams missed a trick by not getting him. I know Arsenal were linked with him in January when Newcastle signed him. I think he'd have been the perfect partner for Partey. I think Man United missed a trick by not going for him. We'll get into Man United's midfield problems later. But I think Newcastle are excellent. I think this could be a really good game to watch.
Yeah, and I think, as you know, I'm a big fan of Bruno. I've got him in my fantasy football team, and I like that he offers not only offers that protection to that back line, but he can also quickly change a game like that with one pass, loops over. He's got a whole range of passing. He's a top pro, as is Joe Linton in that new role. He's done really, really well in that role. And I fully agree with you. If they get someone like Maddison, that midfield three is quite dangerous. And bar the top 6, getting close to some of the top 6 would be one of the best in the league.
Here's a
Maybe
controversial one. Obviously, we've just spoke about Arsenal, but which midfield three would you prefer? Partey, Xhaka, or Ødegaard, or Bruno, Joe Linton, and let's say Maddison? Because for me, I'd rather have the Newcastle
I think
midfield.
hands down, I'd rather have Newcastle midfield.
Yeah,
I really like the project that they're building down there, and Eddie Howe seems like a really good manager for them. As for Brighton, again, they had an excellent game against Man United, and I thought they played a really bold start by, rather than starting wing backs, they started two wingers out wide, and it really took the game to Man United and really made it uncomfortable for him. Uh, and I expected Ten Hag to do better in managing that game, especially with someone as much experience as he has, especially down at Ajax. But I think uh, Brighton absolutely brilliant. Graham Potter as well, fantastic. Well, what are your thoughts on Brighton?
I'd just like to touch on something about Ten Hag. I know you said you thought he'd do better. I personally feel that this Man United crop of players, there's no manager in the world that can get the results at Man United. I think the best Man United can hope for with this current squad. I know they've been linked with a few players, and we'll touch on that later. If they keep that McFred midfield, they are not getting higher than sixth at all. But onto Brighton, like you said, the tactically Graham Potter had them set up perfectly. They had them in a 3-4-3 with a diamond in midfield. Moises Caicedo, I bigged him up on the last podcast. He is the perfect Basuma replacement. They have not missed Basuma in this first game at all. He's got an engine. He reads the game well. He's ferocious in the tackle. He's absolutely everywhere. I reckon his heat map was just a perfect square of the pitch. He was everywhere. McAllister's growing more and more on me. I wasn't a fan of him when he first started playing. I think he's really technically gifted and really creative. For me, the way Brighton pressed Man United's poor midfield pivot of McFred and pushed onto the fullbacks just meant that Man United were going long and long. And when you've got someone like Lewis Dunk at the back and other players that are good in the air, the ball's just going to keep coming back. And I thought that's what Brighton did really well. I
Yeah,
still think they need strikers.
yeah,
They had 15 shots, only 4 on target. And other than the goals, they didn't really have too many big opportunities.
yeah.
So I think if they could get one striker in, obviously they've got Undav to come into the team who was brilliant in the Belgian league last year. I think Brighton could be in for a top half finish personally. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, and I think Brighton will have a very similar season to what they had last year. I think they will improve, and I think where Leicester were last year, I think that's the type of position they could be pushing for. They've got the right manager, they've got the right tactics for it, they've got the right ethos about them, and I think it's brilliant. And I think, but I do think they'll slip to a 1-0 loss against Newcastle. What do you think?
I've gone 1-1. I think they're both really good. Something to touch on with Newcastle as well. One of the good appointments I did think they've made over the summer was Dan Ashworth.
Yeah,
He was brilliant at West Bromwich Albion, got them to some of their, I think they finished 8th and 10th twice while he was the technical director and signed some really good gems. Obviously, he was fantastic in the England setup. Brilliant at Brighton, was the catalyst for the project we see there now. And I think he's going to be absolutely key
yeah,
for Newcastle and their signings going forward. I've gone 1-1 on this game. Let's move on to City Bournemouth. City were excellent.
yeah,
I see a lot of complaints about Man City from neutral saying they're boring, they're boring, they're boring. But they play football how it's meant to be played. Lovely passing football. They
yeah,
control the play. They had 75% possession and restricted West Ham to 1 or 2 shots on target. This is West Ham that finished 7th last season. This isn't 17th or 15th. This is West Ham, who are a good side. They have players like Declan Rice, Antonio, Bowen, and none of them got a sniff. None of them got near this Man City team. I think Rodri, for me, is the best CDM in world football. I think the way he recycles the play, wins the ball back, reads it, how strong he is on the ball, how efficient he is with keeping it. I think he's the best DM in the league, overtaking Fabinho for me, and then subsequently in the world. I do think they missed a little bit of creativity with Bernardo Silva on the bench. They only had 2 shots on target all game, Man City, which, considering they had 75% possession, is a poor, sort of not conversion rate, but a poor chance to minute
yeah,
ratio of what they had the ball with. So I do think they need to start being a bit more clinical. I think sometimes they are guilty of overplaying it. I thought Grealish had a decent game. His first, for me, one of his first standout games for Man City. I think he's been quite quiet last season. I think he really needs to up it this season. But the main man, Erling Braut Haaland, what a player. I knew he was quick, but I didn't know he was that quick for that second goal. Obviously scored the penalty as well, and just gives City that cutting edge that I think that even though they've been absolutely monsters in the goal scoring stats. I think with him they're going to be even better. And I think once that partnership with De Bruyne and Grealish grow, because you can see off the pitch they've got a good friendship. They've got, they all comment on each other's Instagrams, have banter. I think once they've put more time into the relationship and their understanding, I think Haaland will get over 20, maybe 25 goals this season with De Bruyne and Grealish feeding him. What did you think?
Yeah, and I like that directness that Haaland adds to that Man City team. That you were saying about them being boring, that they pass a lot. With having Haaland in that team, he has that opportunity to just turn a shoulder, and they can be in and behind. And I think with Grealish, I think he'll get the best out of Grealish. I think last season, Grealish lacked anyone that he could supply to really in that forward role. I know they had Jesus, but I think it's not quite the same style as Man City were after in terms of a striker. Same with De Bruyne. De Bruyne will always create in this league. He can create for anyone. If you make
Best
those runs,
midfielder in the
he will
league
find you. Oh, absolutely. By a country mile for me. I think he's top quality pro, and he's done it season in, season out, and he does it very, very consistently. As for Bournemouth, as we already spoke about this in the Villa game, but they played absolutely brilliantly. I thought the way that they nullified Villa in that game, the way that they actually took the game to Villa, got a couple of good goals, and I think they did really well. But I think Man City will have far too much. I think it's going to be a 3-0 comfortable win for Man City.
One thing I'd actually like to apologise to any Bournemouth fans watching is I criticised them defensively. I thought they didn't have the defence to play in the Premier League. I was really, really impressed with Lloyd Kelly. Left-footed, reads the game really well, really tough tackling centre-back, bit old-fashioned for me. It reminds me a bit of Tyrone Mings, in all fairness, but a little bit better for me in this game. I was really impressed with him. Thought Mark Travers, another player who I said he was a good goalie, but whether he was number one, thought he had a solid game as well. They're going to have to step up. I still think they need more back there over the course of the season, goalkeeper and centre-back. But other than that, I thought Bournemouth played really well, really good on set pieces, which is what I expected from them to be like in this league, sort of looking for breakaways and set pieces. I think City will have too much for them, unfortunately. I've gone 3-0 as well, Man City.
Okay, excellent. So shall we move quickly on to Southampton? What do you think of Southampton?
I had Southampton to go down in our Premier League predictions, and they've shown nothing in that first game that makes me think otherwise. Obviously, Ward-Prowse scored a lovely goal. For me, he does carry them in everything. His set pieces, his goals, his assists, his energy on the pitch, his leadership. I think if they were somehow to lose him, I know no one's really interested in him at the moment, but if they were to lose him, I'd actually have them to finish second bottom, maybe even bottom. I think they'd be terrible. They've got no Premier League level goal scorer for me in this side. Armstrong started for 45 minutes. I think he touched the ball 5-6 times. Adams, for me, isn't clinical enough in this league. And then obviously they've got the young lad, Sekou Mara, who's just coming into the side, only 19, not even played that many senior games. I've saw that a link to Delap. For me, that's the wrong sort of signing that they need. They need some experience. They've signed some really good young players, Bazunu, Lavia, Aribo. But for me, now they need some experience at both ends of the pitch. They look poor defensively. Obviously, Spurs are a good side. That Salisu own goal was absolutely awful, though, for me. He's a player that I do really rate highly, but that is awful. I'd be worried if I was a Southampton fan this year, personally. They need to sign at least 3 more players of proven Premier League quality, not keep going for all these young kids, not a Delap. They need someone who's guaranteed to get them 10 goals for a start up front, and then they need someone who can protect the defence for me, and then someone who can play in defence.
I think this is where we talk about balance a lot, because Southampton have signed those young players who, in 4, 5, 6 years' time, they could be brilliant players. They could also go on that curveball and not reach the potential that they could have had. This is where they need that experience as well. The players that they know will perform consistently week in, week out. And other than Ward-Prowse, I don't see many players in that team who have that capability of performing week in, week out, but the standard that Southampton need to stay up in this Premiership. If something happens to Ward-Prowse this season, as you said, there is no interest at the moment, but that's not the only thing that could happen. He could pick up an injury, and if he picks up even, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks, those 3 or 4 weeks could be really pivotal for Southampton's season.
Going on about players that perform week in, week out, I think they've got Ward-Prowse. I really like Kyle Walker-Peters as well, but there's talk of him going to Chelsea as the right wing back alternate for Reece James. I think if they lost those two, then they're in a lot of trouble, and they do really need that goal scorer. On to Leeds. I thought Leeds were really energetic, really impressive. Really impressive Brandon Aronson. He was everywhere. You know, he was a player Marsh knew well from his time at Salzburg, and obviously he's American, so has that connection and knowledge about him. He really impressed me. I've got him in my fantasy team, and when he scored, he was first on my bench, and I was absolutely gutted. But then obviously he got ruled as an own goal. But I think he looks one to watch, and obviously Rodrigo. You know, Bamford's been struggling with injury problems. Could he be that 9 to replace Bamford? Maybe they don't need to sign one. Maybe Rodrigo could step up. What were your thoughts?
Oh, I thought that Aronson was absolutely everywhere. I really rated him when I was watching the game back, and they did really well to fight back against Wolves to break it 2-1. That was a really good win for them, and I think that might kick on their season a little bit. I still have question marks over their manager. I don't know if he's the right manager for the job, whether he's got that experience, whether in tighter games whether he'll have just about enough to get things over the line. That's my only question. But I think Leeds will be okay. I don't think they'll get relegated. I think they'll be down there, but I think they'll just about be okay.
I agree.
But I've actually gone Southampton to win this game 1-0, but I can't see Southampton winning that many games this season. But I think this is one game that they could win.
I'm with you. I don't see Southampton winning many games, and for me, this is a game they need to win. But for me, I've gone 2-1 Leeds. I think Leeds will have too much energy. Southampton. I'm gonna put my neck on the line here. For me, Southampton won't keep a clean sheet this game, so I don't see them winning 1-0. Maybe a 2-1 win, but then again, I don't see them scoring 2 goals. Could be 1-1, but I think Leeds will win 2-1. On to the next game, Wolves and Fulham. Obviously, Wolves played Leeds. They lost 2-1, but they dominated the ball in the back four. You know, Kilman and Collins were fairly untroubled. You know, they had 15 shots, 6 on target. But for me, they need that number 9 as well. There's so many teams in this league that need that number 9.
Yeah.
They had Hwang Hee-chan up front. I thought they had no cutting edge with him, really. It was all mainly coming through Podence and Neto, who I thought both had a really good game. Obviously, Podence scored the goal. Neto looked impressive throughout, taking players on, beating them, putting crosses in. But just had no one on the end of him. They really miss that Jimenez of 3 years ago. And obviously, he's got this injury now. He's had the skull injury. I don't think he's the same player, let alone after this latest setback. Hwang's not the type of striker they need. They need that old-fashioned number 9. You see the top teams like Liverpool, obviously with Núñez, Haaland at Man City. They need that number 9 to finish the chances. And I think unless they get it, you'll see a lot of Wolves this season where they dominate the ball, dominate chances, but they just lack that cutting edge to get the 3 points. Sarr had a poor game, which is uncharacteristic for me. He was a calamity on the first and second goals for me. I thought he had a really poor game, and to me, he was one of the standout goalkeepers in the league last year. So that was a rare occurrence. I want to talk about the loss of Connor Cody as well. Obviously, you mentioned how good of a signing that is for Everton. I think on the pitch, Wolves won't really miss him that much because now they've gone to a back four. Kilman, Collins. You know, I don't think they've actually got many minutes. But what I do think they'll miss is that leadership and that experience. And I also think, like, for squad depth, because I wrote it down in my notes. Their bench had on Kem Campbell, Bueno, Yerson Mosquera, Hodge, Ronan, and Luke Cundle, who are all youth products. Not really many to change the game. Obviously, they had Connor Cody on there as well. He's now gone. Wolves' squad depth, I would honestly say, is one of, if not the worst in the league. And I think Bruno's a good manager. I think Wolves have got a good 11. And I just think he's not been given the funds to increase the squad numbers and the depth, so that when a Jimenez gets injured, they do just massively miss him. What were your thoughts on Wolves?
Well, so I'm going to sound a little bit more like Michael Owen here, but at the end of the day, to win games, you have to score goals, and to stay in this division, you have to win games. And the one problem I find with Wolves at the moment is the fact that Jimenez got injured, the fact that they let Fabio Silva go out on loan. I question where are their goals going to come from. I don't think they will go down. I think they're going to be down or thereabouts. I don't think they'll go down, but they need to sign that striker so they can start winning games, so they can start finding that clinical goal scoring.
They need a few players, mate. Their depth is terrible. I know they've got Semedo and Jimenez out injured at the minute, but obviously letting Cody go on a loan as well. I don't get why a loan. Apparently, Wolves are in a state where they need to sell to buy.
Yeah.
So obviously, you have no plans to use Cody in the back four. Why not sell him and use that money to put towards the striker, the cover midfielders, a replacement for Cody? Instead, they've got a loan fee, and then when he comes back, he's going to be a year older, a year further down his contract. It's going to be less valuable, and then they're not going to have the money to reinvest in the team. For me, it's a poor decision from Wolves.
I fully agree. And I'm just going to go on to Fulham. And I thought Fulham were absolutely brilliant in that game against Liverpool. Not many teams will get a result against Liverpool. And even further, that not many teams in this division will lead Liverpool twice in a game. And so I think for that reason, they were absolutely brilliant against that Liverpool side. Mitrovic, we questioned him before whether he'd have that same prowess in the Premier League as what he had in the Championship. If anything to go off on the first game, for me suggests that he will be able to have a better season again this season. And providing he stays fit, it seems like he suits Marco Silva's way of playing. They play it through him, they get him involved, they put crosses in the box, they let him attack things in the box. And if Fulham put in more performances like that, I think without a shadow of a doubt they will be staying up. But they have to carry on those performances. They have to provide for Mitrovic because he will get you goals.
Yeah. I don't think we questioned him as such. I think we said he could get you about 10, maybe even 15 goals. It's where the rest of the goals are coming from.
Yeah.
A player that I've picked up on this podcast before, João Palhinha. I thought he was phenomenal. I thought he overshadowed Fabinho, who for me had an awful game. He was commanding. He was efficient with the passing. He stopped many Liverpool counter attacks. He was an engine. I was really, really impressed with him, and I think regardless of what happens with Fulham, he'll be in the Premier League next season. And Mitrovic, for me, complete striker's performance. First player in a few years to dribble past Van Dijk. First player in Premier League history to dribble past and win a penalty against Van Dijk in the same game. 2 goals, led the line well. Kept peeling off onto the full-backs to win things in the air, which I thought was brilliant, old-fashioned centre-forward play, because you're not going to get much change aerially out of Matip or Van Dijk. Trent and Robertson, though, they're there to be got at in the air, as you can see with the headed goal. I think they were really impressive for them. And another player, obviously, I said I picked up Palhinha. One player that I criticised in this podcast was Tim Ream, and Tim Ream had a fantastic game for me. He marked Bobby Firmino out of the game to the fact he was subbed off after 55 minutes, and the amount of blocks he put in on Nunes could have had 2 or 3. We'll touch on about him later.
Yeah,
but he put at least 1 or 2 brilliant blocks in. And I've saw today that they're signing Issa Diop. Obviously, he'll probably displace Ream, but Ream showed that he can still go in the Premier League off this game because there's not many better attacks than Liverpool.
Yeah.
I think signing Issa Diop's a great signing.
I think it's brilliant. Yeah.
There was a few years ago he was linked with the likes of Man United, Chelsea, Tottenham. And I think if they can get that Issa Diop back, him and Tosin Adarabioyo could be a really good partnership there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got this game as a 1-1 draw. I think I fancy both teams to grab a point in this game.
Yeah, I agree. I've gone 1-1 as well. Should we go into Brentford, Man United?
Absolutely, yeah.
Do you want to start on Man United? I think we've got a lot to talk about with them.
Yeah, so I've actually got quite a lot on my notes for Man United, and I really it's what we can only describe as a shocking result against Brighton. And this is no discredit to Brighton. Brighton, a good side, and I expect them to be up there. But Man United, the longer they have both McTominay and Fred in this midfield, the more that they will continue to struggle. And I know they've got Rabiot incoming, but for me, I want to question, is Rabiot the answer? What does Rabiot offer that McTominay doesn't? Martinez, I thought, for the most part, looked composed, except almost giving away a bit of a sloppy penalty, but which probably should have been a penalty in all fairness. Eriksen, I thought he had a good game. He put some good balls into the box. Lacked that someone on the end of those. Rashford a couple of times was close, but the fact that he should have tried more, I think he could have got onto some of those crosses and scored a goal. I think for that reason, for me, he also had a poor game. I saw a lot of fans say about De Gea had a poor game. And yes, he didn't have as good games as he can do, but for me, De Gea is not the problem in that club. And I think he's still one of the leaders in that club and one of the ones who demands everyone to try at that club. There's that whole Ronaldo saga going on, which I think is an absolute farce. And I think there needs to be a lot of change at Man United. And for me, Ten Hag is probably the one manager who can get that change, but they're going to have to be patient with him.
Yeah, I think it's a 3-4 year project with Ten Hag. I think Man United need to do what Arsenal did Just let him get rid of the players first. Bring
Yeah,
through a couple of years. But Man United's board need to back him. I think the business they've done this summer isn't enough. Eriksen's a good free signing, but they already had Bruno and Van der Beek, so are they really strengthening or just adding to a position they were already well stocked in? Malacia seems like a good signing, and I like you. I thought Martinez had a good game, but should have given away a sloppy penalty. But they need more than that. We've said all summer they need 2 central midfielders. They need a deep line 6 and someone that can get forward as an 8. Who can pass the ball, because signing Rabiot, if you saw his stats from last season at Juventus, he's worse than McTominay for all the progressive passes, touches, anything creative, which is what Man United need, because McTominay and Fred, despite all their poor qualities, do work hard, but it's the lack of technical ability that is and a lot on the ball ability that is holding Man United back now. I think neither should be starting, let alone together. For me, if they'd have got De Jong and Sangare, I've said it before, I think that would have been perfect. There's been so many central. I think the lad at Fulham, Palhinha, would have been a perfect signing. I think they've had an absolute shocking window for Ten Hag, and I do feel really sorry for him. I think De Gea did have a poor game because I think Brighton manoeuvred the game to play against De Gea's weaknesses, which is his distribution. Everything kept going back to him, and then he just booted it back to them. You know, they pressed the outfield that well that the ball just keep coming back to De Gea, and we all know he's not good at distributing the ball, so it just kept coming back to Brighton in good areas then. Obviously they're up against Brentford, who we touched on a little bit earlier. They went 2-0 down to Leicester, showed great heart. That's one thing about Brentford you always have. They've got great heart, great commitment. They all really play for Thomas Franks, who I'll be honest, I'm not his biggest fan as a character, but as a manager, I think he's really good. Ivan Toney, for me, is a player that Man United should be looking at for me. You mentioned Ronaldo going. I think Martial and Rashford aren't out and out number 9s. So for me, I know he's not the most glamorous in this, but I think Ivan Toney would be a great signing for Man United. His hold-up play is incredible. For someone who's not 6'2", 6'3", he's one of the best headerers of the ball in the whole league. He's got a great leap. He's strong. You know, he's not slow either. He's got some pace.
It's his movement off the ball for me that makes him such a good header. He can get away from those centre-halves and almost get a free header more often than not.
Yeah. For me, I think he's the best striker outside of all the big names in the league. I'd put him about 6th or 7th in the Premier League. I really rate him. And I think Man United or even Chelsea wouldn't go wrong with having him up front. I think he'd bring in their wide play as well, Sancho and Rashford, like he does with Mbomo, like he will more with Lewis Potter as time progresses. Wissa obviously did it before in the Championship. I think he's brilliant. I think Mikael Damsgaard's a really good signing. I mentioned they needed someone to replace Eriksen's creativity in set pieces, as we saw in the recent Euros. You know, that free kick he scored against England. He's really good on set pieces. He does need to up his numbers for me. He's always been around the 5 goals, 5 assists mark. If he can get the 8 to 10 of both, I think that's a brilliant signing for Brentford, especially for 15 million. After the back of the Euros, he was wanted for 40, 45. And because of all this, I actually think Brentford will win 2-1 against Man United. I think they'll score off a set piece because Martinez isn't the biggest. And if they play Varane, I don't think either of those are really good in the air. I think Tony will bully them both. And I think Brentford will win 2-1.
See, I actually think this will be one of those games where Ronaldo probably unfairly comes back in the team after the way he's treated Man United at the moment. But I reckon this will be a game where he comes back into the team, scores a couple of goals, and Man United get a 2-0 win just because of having Ronaldo in the team.
Yeah, I don't see Man United not conceding after what I watched on Sunday. Right, on to the next game now, Forest West Ham. I thought Forest were really poor. I was really disappointed how they played. I thought, first game back in the Premier League for over 20 years. I thought they'd have been really up for it. Lots of chances. And the one thing I did say about Steve Cooper is that he's a defensive-minded manager. And for me, they got the setup totally wrong against Newcastle. They should have took the game more to them. I thought other than the 1/2 chance, I thought Lingard was non-existent. They had no shots on target. And I think if Forest are to stay in this league, they need to be more than just defensively sound. Goals win games. They need to let those attacking players, the likes of your Johnsons, your Lingards, obviously a One-U when he comes in, they all need to start scoring goals for them. And the way Forest set up just hinders that at the minute. And I think they just played into Newcastle's hands, letting them have the ball, sitting deep, letting Bruno spray the passes about. I thought I was really disappointed with Forest. I do think that'd be different now they're at home with all the fans on the back, like cheering the team on. Obviously, West Ham, we'll speak about them in literally a minute. They didn't really pose much threat against Man City. So I do think it's going to be a tight game. I think, like we mentioned with Southampton Leeds earlier, this is a game that Forest need to get some points out of. Obviously, being at home, West Ham not off to the best starts. But yeah, what did you think about Nottingham Forest?
See, I thought Newcastle managed that game brilliantly. They did what Forest didn't, and they took the game to Forest. They almost made Forest play poorly, but that's no excuse for Forest. Forest should have done better. They should have got their midfield involved, which for me isn't a bad midfield that they've got in this division. I know some of it's a little bit unproven, but Lingard I thought had a pretty non-existent game, and if Forest want to get points in this division, he has to play to a better standard, to the similar standard that he did when he was at West Ham, which again we'll get onto in just a second. But I think Forest were just completely outplayed, completely shown how hard the Premier League is, and it's not just the big six that will make you have hard games. Anyone in this division, if they play against your weaknesses, they can make you have a difficult afternoon. I think there's something that Forest have to learn very, very quickly. As for West Ham, they had a very, very tough opening game against Man City, and but the first half they really struggled to get a foot on the ball, and as you said, that 75% possession throughout the whole game suggests that throughout the majority of the game they struggled to get on the ball. But I thought when they brought Skamaka on, even when they didn't have the ball, they was able to turn the ball over a lot quicker. They actually had some decent players involved in the second half, and they actually managed to progress a little bit more. And for me, if they want to do well in this game, they have to do a little bit more of that and get Skamaka on the ball more, and I think he should start against Forest, because I think he will really unnerve that Forest back line.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. It's hard to really analyse West Ham from that first game because they had such little ball and who they were playing. One thing I will say though is Manuel Lanzini. Unfortunately, I think West Ham need to move on from him. His stats were awful for that game, and I think the last couple of years he's really declined from that player that we thought he was going to be prior to his big injury. I agree with Skamaka. He looked really good in the air, but there's not much to say about West Ham. It was all City for at least 70, 80 minutes of the game. Rice works hard in midfield. I'm a big fan of Declan Rice, but the whole team was just up against it, really. Obviously, they've loaned out Vlasic now to Torino. I still think they need one or two others just to increase the squad depth. But other than that, I still think West Ham will have a good season. And I've had them to win this game 1-0.
I've also got them to win this game 1-0. So shall we go on to the blockbuster game of this weekend of Chelsea?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Chelsea Spurs. Chelsea, for me, controlled the game really well against Everton. But as I've been saying for Chelsea for about 2 years now, no cutting edge up front. For me, Sterling is not... the way Chelsea play doesn't suit having a false nine. They need a number 9. Having Havertz off him as well didn't make any sense. And I'll be honest, I was a massive fan of Havertz at Bayer Leverkusen. I did used to watch the Bundesliga when he was there. I thought that in that sort of second striker role, or the midfielder that gets into the box and links the play, I thought he was excellent. I think Chelsea haven't used him properly in the 9, but we need to start talking about him now. It's his 3rd season. Obviously, they've just sold Timo Werner, another one that didn't really work out. Although they're playing him out of position for me as a number 9, he needs to start contributing more goals and more assists in this Chelsea team, especially the amount of crosses that the wing backs supply and the amount of possession that they have as a team. They need to start, first of all, creating chances for him, and then he needs to be more clinical on the end of them. He was 72 million. I know he's a young player, but that is a lot of money invested in someone that's not really returned now. I know he scored the Champions League final goal, but I feel if that had fell to any other player and someone else had scored that, he'd have been getting absolute pelters now, and I still think he should be. I think he's massively underperforming his price tag. I thought Koulibaly had a great game. I know Everton's attack isn't the greatest, but he was really steady at the back. Surprisingly, something that I never associate with Koulibaly is that his passing was really good. Obviously, the pass for the penalty was sublime. Some of his diagonals were brilliant. I thought they'd really missed that game from Rudiger to Koulibaly. But Koulibaly's really seemed to have stepped in really well there. And I think Koulibaly, Silva, and whoever they signed for that right centre-back role, whether it be Fofana, any of the other names I think Chelsea will be fine defensively. I like the signing of Cucurella.
Yes,
A little bit surprised that he went to Chelsea instead of Man City. They do already have Chilwell, but he does, as we've spoken, he does always seem to get one big injury a year. Obviously, they want some cover for Reece James, whether it's Walker Peters or Dumfries. I think that's good. But for me, two things need to happen. Tuchel needs to implement a new attacking pattern of play because Chelsea are really easy to defend against. I think Everton were comfortable for large periods of the game, and obviously they only scored off a penalty.
yeah.
They've got Tottenham this week, who are one of the best defensive teams in the league, if not the world, and they're going to have to try and break them down. And at the minute, I don't see Chelsea doing that. So Tuchel needs to implement a new attacking style of play, but they also do need some fresh blood in that attack for me. I like Bro, yeah, I think he should be given more games. Obviously Sterling, but played out left. For me, they need that right winger, and I'd still go and get another number 9 if I was Chelsea. What were your thoughts on Chelsea?
Well, so the one thing I want to question is Chelsea's approach, not just in terms of from the manager, but also from behind the scenes. It seems to me that they struggled to actually implement the correct number 9. They had Lukaku last year. That didn't really work out for them. They had Werner, who was a different striker to Lukaku. That didn't work for them. It seems like they're struggling to find a striker that really suits their system. And I don't know if this is because the board demands them to be defensively sound first before scoring goals for football, or is that just the type of managers that they sign because they've had Conte in the past, they've had Jose Mourinho, and now they've got Thomas Tuchel, which in my opinion, they're not what we call defensive managers. For big six sides, they are defensive, but I would say any manager that manages a big six side isn't defensive. It's just the way that whether they play progressively, whether they want to be organised and score goals. There's two different ways you can look about it. But for me, Chelsea needs to try and find that striker that actually suits them down to the ground, who will make that movement off the ball, who will get in the box for crosses, who will also come deep, who will collect the ball, who will recycle the ball. They need almost that complete forward, almost what Kane does for Tottenham in a way, because Tottenham as well, we'll go quickly onto them, Antonio Conte, who he really is that type of manager who wants that defensive football. He wants to be organised, but the way this Tottenham side are, those front three of Kulusevski, Son, and Kane, they are, for me, the three most deadliest forwards in this league. And they will score goals in pretty much almost all games, if not every game this season. They will get a goal as long as those three are playing for me. And having Richarlison on the bench, it's absolutely blockbuster forwards stuff. And I think the type of player that Spurs have in Kane is the one type of player that Chelsea are missing.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big difference between those two at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. I also think Conte, even though being defensive, does know how to play sort of a good counter-attacking style. I don't think Tuchel's worked that out with Chelsea yet.
No.
Obviously, Spurs won 4-1 without Son or Kane scoring. That's brilliant. A player I really like, I like Ryan Sessegnon at left wing back. I think he's really flourished under Conte, and I think if Jed Spence can sort of apply himself the way Sessegnon has, I think they could see two young English fullbacks there. Obviously, they've got Perisic as well, who'll probably displace Sessegnon in time, and they've also just signed Destiny Udogie, who's another left wing back. But I was really impressed with Sessegnon. I have been since Conte took over. But for me, Kulusevski's the star of their 4-1 win over Southampton.
Yeah.
I said him or Diaz was the signing of January. Diaz sort of failed off towards him, whereas Kulusevski went from strength to strength. And Kulusevski started this season like a house on fire. His age as well, that when they trigger the permanent deal, they're going to get 10 years out of him, 8 years, unless he moves to a Real Madrid or a Barcelona. He is a really direct, cut inside winger. He reminds me of how Salah plays, but a bit taller and a little bit sort of different physically. For me, I've gone 2-0 Spurs in this game. I just don't see Chelsea breaking down Spurs' defence.
I've got 2-1. I can see Chelsea getting a lucky break with a goal, but I think Spurs will be relatively comfortable, even if they are just going to hold a one goal lead.
Right, then on to the last, I believe this is the last game of the weekend,
Yep.
Liverpool Palace. I'll start us off with Palace. They opened the game up on Friday night. I thought they were really going to start quickly against Arsenal. I was a little bit disappointed with how slow off the blocks they were, whether that was Arsenal being really fired up and on it at them from the first whistle, whether it was Palace being a bit sluggish. I think it was a mix of both. they're rarely troubled. I was very surprised that when Arsenal had White and Zinchenko at full back. I was very surprised at how many times they got out, because to me that would have been Arsenal's weak point. Ben White out of position, Zinchenko first game, not necessarily the best defensively, especially one-on-one. And I just felt they didn't trouble them enough. There was one or two moments Ramsdale had to pull off one or two saves, but I think Palace are really showing that they haven't had a proper pre-season. Only half the squad could go on the pre-season tour. Then there was something to do with COVID. I think they've only had one proper game as a squad. So I think Palace would be a side that grows as the season goes on.
Yeah.
Obviously, the own goal from Gay was a bit unfortunate. And to be fair, they did restrict Arsenal to 2 shots on target, but Palace didn't really create much against Arsenal either.
No.
One or two saves from Ramsdale. Tough game here. Obviously, I'll go into my prediction a bit. I don't really fancy them to get much from this. Palace do have hard fixtures, which makes that poor pre-season a little bit worse, because you need to beat your best to beat your Arsenals, your Liverpools. And unfortunately, I don't think Palace are yet. I think they'll come good about 5-6 games in. What did you think of Palace?
I sort of disagree with you on your last comment there, saying it's a bit unfortunate when you need to be on your best. But I think the fact that they're playing these bigger teams to begin with, the fact that they haven't had a proper preseason, they can actually use these games to sort of gain their sharpness back. I know the confidence isn't going to be too great after them, but they'll be going into hopefully a run of games where they can actually hope to pick up points. Whereas if they started off with those games where they was hoping to pick up points when they didn't have a great preseason, then maybe you could look at a perspective where then they'd start playing the bigger sides where they might find themselves in a low position than what they should be after, say, 10, 11, 12 games. Whereas, for me in that game against Arsenal, the one thing that really concerned me is how little Eze or Zaha managed to get forward in the game. And I know Arsenal did really well in retaining, winning back possession, then going back on the front foot. That was one of Arsenal's main strengths. I still thought there would have been a little bit more from both Eze and Zaha, two players who really are, top players in this division who can create stuff on their own. Whereas if we go on to Liverpool, I think it was a very disappointing opening game. They've played, I think, 4 promoted sides on the first game of the season in the last 4 seasons. And against this Fulham side, with no disrespect to Fulham, Liverpool should have really won this game quite comfortably. And it's credit to Fulham really playing the way that they did to make it uncomfortable for Liverpool. But again, with the players that they've got on the pitch, they really should have won that game. And I think they'll be looking to bounce back. They'll have that Anfield stadium back out. They'll have the cop pushing them on for what I think will be a good, strong victory here.
I think Liverpool are awful, mate. I think you've done them on paper. Yeah, they should come through beat Fulham, but in the Premier League, if you don't turn up against any side, you've got a possibility of losing. That's why for me it's the most competitive league in the world. Van Dijk had his worst game in Liverpool shirt that I've certainly witnessed. He got dribbled past by Mitrovic, who's not necessarily known for taking players on and beating them. I feel like they were afraid of Mitrovic. Henderson in that third midfielder spot before Thiago's injury. I touched on it in the last pod. For me, there is no game in this league where Liverpool should have Fabinho and Henderson. For me, Henderson now he's getting later on in his career, should be the rotational option for Fabinho when he needs a rest, when he's injured, when he's suspended. Having those two together just stifles creativity, and I think that's what you saw with Liverpool. They really lack creativity. Both the fullbacks didn't get going forward enough, what we normally see from Liverpool, and they really lack that creativity, especially when Thiago went off as well. The front three were starved of the ball mostly. But then the game changed. Thiago got injured. Elliott come on. I thought Elliott was phenomenal. For me, he's got to start the next game. I still think Liverpool need to sign that third midfield spot. I saw them linked with Mathias Nunes, perfect. Yuri Tillemans, perfect. Someone's just a little bit better going forward than Jordan Henderson. And I think Elliott should definitely... The link-up play between Salah, Elliott and Nunes for me was really good and what got Liverpool back in the game. And then obviously Nunes come on, got the goal, caused problems, really changed the emphasis of the game in Liverpool's favour. He was direct. He was doing what Nunes was doing to Van Dijk and Matip in sort of bullying the centre-half, running off the shoulder. One thing I criticised him for in the first pod we did on the Premier League was that I didn't think he was very good technically. His first touch was sublime this game. He was bringing crosses that were knee height down, chopping the ball, laying it off. Little first touch dinks, back heels into like Salah and Diaz. I thought he was really good, and I think he should definitely start this game as well. What did you think?
Yeah, I really like that Nunes. I like the type of player that Liverpool has signed with that young age profile. He's got that ability to improve, but he's also had a really good track record last season. And it's a risk. It's definitely a risk because he's never done it in the Premier League. He's never done it in the top five leagues. But I think he looks like he's going to be a really good signing. He's looks like he's going to bring that quality that Liverpool need in that central area because that's probably the one area that they struggled in last season when they had Mane playing as that striker. For me, he's not a natural striker, and both Liverpool and Man City had problems in that area last year where they didn't have that natural striker. And I think now that Liverpool have Nunes, Man City have Haaland, I think it's leading to a very exciting Premier League season, especially with Tottenham having Kane, Arsenal having Jesus, and I think we're missing just Chelsea, Man United having two quality strikers to make it a really, really exciting Premier League season. And for me, I've got Liverpool to win this game 3-0.
I've gone 2-0. I still think Liverpool will have some teething problems. Obviously, no Thiago is a big miss. He's out for a few weeks. And obviously, you anticipate it'll be Fabinho, Henderson, and Elliott in midfield, which, again, Fabinho and Henderson, for me, shouldn't play together. But yeah, I've gone 2-0. And I believe that wraps up all the fixtures for this week. So thank you for listening, guys. Peace out.
Thank you very much.